All right, so this is a review for tomorrow's quiz. There's only two sections, right? Section 4.9 and 4.11. 4.9 was all about solving using the quadratic formula. 4.11 was using imaginary numbers or complex numbers, right? Like breaking them down, we would add them, subtract them, multiply them, and see what happens with them. So that's what we're going to basically be reviewing, those two main things, okay? Now, just as a quick reminder, this is one of the formulas we'll be using. Okay, so good to have this memorized, but if you don't, then I would say try your best to get it done by today. Okay, but memorize this thing because it's probably one of the more important formulas in solving quadratics. So I'll also write some stuff out for the imaginary units, but for now, that's the only one you have to know, okay? So we're going to use that formula to solve, okay? So if you look at number 1, my A value is a 2, my B value is a 3, my C value is a -2. So I'm just going to basically plug it into that formula and solve. Again, I'm using M letters, right? Like 2m squared plus 3m minus 2. So you're supposed to use m instead of x for your formula. If you forget, though, it's okay. So what I mean is, if you write it like this, x equals 2, even though technically it's not correct, but it doesn't matter. You're solving for the values, okay? I'm looking for the numbers, so much what letter you're doing. But you're supposed to put m equals 2 in this case, all right? But if you don't worry. I'm not going to mark you wrong. Notice I'm just going to leave it like that. So negative b, which is 3, b squared, that's going to be 3 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is -2, all over 2 times a, which is 2 times 2. Remember, I told you guys, be very careful when you do this because you're going to have to do like some multiplication and stuff, and you want to make sure you get it right. So let's see. The -3 just becomes -3. 3 squared is 9. And then -4 times 2 is -8 times a -2 is a positive 16. And that's all over 4. Now 9 plus 16, that's 25. So x is equal to -3 plus or minus the square root of 25 over 4. And I know the square root of 25, that's 5. So this is x equal to -3 plus or minus 5 over 4. Okay, so I'm basically done. I just got to write out my two answers. So let me kind of carry them over here. There's two ways that I got to solve this, adding it and subtracting it, right? -3 plus 5, -3 minus 5. So I got to do both. So here's the first one. X equals -3 plus 5 over 4. So that's -3 plus 5 is 2 over 4. So x is half. There's one answer. The other answer I get by subtracting -3 minus 5. Okay, so x is -3 minus 5 over 4. So that's -8 over 4. So x is -2. And those are my two solutions. Okay, now again, this is supposed to say m equals the following answers, but if you put x, I'm okay with that. All right, so I'm just following along. Like I said, I'm just going to leave it like that because it's not wrong. You're looking for two solutions. There they are, 2 and -2.5. But you can see how writing x doesn't make sense because I solved for x, but there's no x's in the original problem, right? There's only m's. So that's why you're supposed to change the letter. Okay, but we understand. You're solving for, you're using the formula, which is in x terms. But yeah, it's fine. The numbers is what's important for me. We have any questions on this one? So it's just using the quadratic formula. Just be careful, okay? I was telling my other classes, when you guys are doing this homework, if you have someone you know who is also doing this assignment, check their answers with yours and see if you guys have the same answers. Because if you guys have like different answers, that means somebody miscalculated. and it's something that's easy to do. So just be careful with that. All right, so for question number 2, remember these problems are supposed to be set equal to 0. According to the definition that I gave you guys yesterday, I'll kind of go back to it right now, but go ahead and write that down. But according to the definition, it says your trinomial has to be set equal to 0. Okay, so ax squared plus bx plus c has to equal to 0. So this one is not equal to 0. I have to kind of fix that. Okay, so in order to fix it, I'm going to move this number over to this side. I'm going to move the 5r to the left. Right now it's a positive 5r, so when I move it, it's going to switch signs. So this is r squared minus 5r minus 8 equals 0. Okay, and now I can write my ABCs and all that stuff. So A is 1, B is negative 5, and C is negative 8. Remember the r squared goes first, the r to the first, so in other words the 5r, that goes in the middle, and then the number is always at the end. Okay? And it should always say equal to 0. This is what I was talking about earlier. So let me go back to the original definition all the way to the beginning. See how it says this has to equal 0? Right? It has to be equal to 0. You can't do the problem if it's not equal to 0. So make sure that you guys remember that. Okay, it has to be equal to 0. Oops, hold on, where am I at here? So let's use the formula. This time I will use the variable I'm supposed to use. So instead of x equals 2, I'm going to put r equals 2, okay? So r equals to negative b, so negative of a negative 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, that's negative 5 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 8, all over 2a, so it's going to be 2 times 1. And then from there, you're just going to try to simplify and start solving. So this gives me r is equal to 5 plus or minus the square root of 25 plus 32. Okay, because negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, and then negative 4 times negative 8 is positive 32. And then this comes out to over 2 on the bottom. So continue to simplify. We have 25 plus 32, that's 57. Okay, so r is equal to 5 plus or minus the square root of 57 over 2. Okay, is there a square root to 57? So if you try to do that, let's see, 7 and 5 add up to 12, so it's divisible by 3. So that goes once, so it's 19, so 3 times 19, that doesn't work. So yeah, you can't break that down. So on your calculator, you type in square root of 57, hit equals. It's going to basically give you square root of 57 again, meaning you can't simplify it. Okay? So I'm done. This is my answer right here. But remember, on a test, you can either write it like that, or you can expand it, right? You can write it as 2 separate answers. So you could put like 5 plus square root of 57 over 2, and 5 minus the square root of 57 over 2. So you could do both, depending on the test style. If it's multiple choice, they'll probably do the one that's expanded. A lot of times the multiple choice one, they expand it for you. If you're doing freehand the way we are, you can write either one and it's fine. Okay? I usually prefer the one that has the plus or minus in it, because it's less to write. So I'm okay with that. Any questions with this one? So again, it's just basic using the quadratic formula. Okay? So from here, we're going to go on to doing things with complex numbers. Okay? Now, remember that I squared is negative 1. Okay, remember that. That's the important part. So I squared is negative 1. So 6i quantity squared basically means 6i times 6i. And I know that 6 times 6 is 36, and I times I is I squared. But knowing that I squared is negative 1, let me replace that. That's 36 times negative 1, which is negative 36. So there you go. That's done. These problems are not meant to be difficult. They're just, there's a little twist to them, right? Before, when you would just get x squared, it was just x squared, like no big deal. Here, if we get I squared, don't forget to switch it, okay, to a negative 1. So here's number 4. So this one's just multiplying, so we're nothing difficult, just multiply it out. So 3 times negative 2, that's a negative 6, and I times I is I squared. But we know that I squared is negative 1, so negative 6 times negative 1 is a positive 6. You don't have to show the work of the conversion of I squared to negative 1. I usually, if I see negative 6i, I just write 6. Sorry, if I see negative 6i squared, I just write negative 6, or positive 6, because I know that I squared is going to change the sign. That's all it does. It just switches the sign. But if you want to show all the steps, that's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. So here's another one, number 5. This is not multiplication, this is just subtraction. So I have a negative 4i minus 6i. They are like terms, right? An I and an I. So negative 4i minus 6i is a negative 10i. Not an I squared because I didn't multiply. Okay? It doesn't change powers if you're not multiplying. The only times variables change powers is when you multiply or divide them. Okay? But if you're adding and subtracting, the variables stay the same. They don't change to square or cubed or anything like that. So that one's pretty easy. No big deal. Again, this is a review for your quiz, so there'll be easy stuff like this on it. Then we're going to do some distribution as well. Okay? So making sure we distribute everything properly. So we'll send this to both of those terms, and then we'll do the same with the positive 3i. But first, let's do the 2 here. So this is going to be negative 2 times 6 is a negative 12, and a negative 2 times a negative 4i is a positive 8i. And then we'll distribute this part here. Okay, so a 3i times a 6, that's a positive 18i. And a 3i times a negative 4i is a negative 12i squared. Now remember, an I squared, all it does is switches the sign. So that negative 12i squared is really just a plus 12. Okay? It's really just a plus 12. So let's rewrite this. I got a negative 12 plus 16. I'm sorry, not 16. That's 26i. And then plus 12. Okay, because remember, I squared is negative 1. So a negative 12 times a negative 1 is a positive 12. Okay? Negative 12 plus 12, that's going to cancel. So your only answer left is 26i. Yeah, don't forget about that, okay, from just a real quick note, just in case people are like, what the heck did you do? A negative 12i squared is the same as a negative 12 times a negative 1. So that's just a positive 12, okay? Just in case you're wondering, like, what happened to that negative 12i squared? It just becomes a positive 12. All right, any questions up to 6? And hopefully you guys thought these things were pretty easy. We got 2 more to go, okay? 2 graphings. The ones where we go from a complex number to a graph, and then the ones where they give you a graph and you have to write it as a complex number. And that's it. So relatively short review. It's not anything too long. Quiz shouldn't be anything that's like extremely difficult. At least I don't think so. So I'm giving you two complex numbers, okay, part A and part B. So one of them is negative 3 plus 4i, the other one is 1 minus 2i. And we also have a coordinate plane with the real and imaginary axes, okay? So remember, in order to graph these things, you got to convert them to points first, okay? So negative 3 plus 4i as a point would be what comma what? And 4, right? So then I'm just going to go to negative 3, 4. So negative 3, 4 is right here. And I'll put A. There's that point. Okay, what's the point for part B? 1, negative 2. All right, so 1, negative 2, that's down here, and that's B, and that's it. Okay, that's all the effort it takes to do these problems right here. It's not hard. Just convert it into a point and graph it. All right, do not connect the dots. Remember I told you, complex numbers are not lines, they're not curves or anything like that. They're just dots. Okay, so just put the dots there and we're good. And here's the last one, and then we're done. So identify the complex number. So again, I don't give you the coordinates. Usually I would, but I don't give you the coordinates because then that's just kind of giving you the answer. You guys have to figure out the coordinates yourself, and then once you know the coordinates, you can write out the complex number. You know what? We could probably even put another one here. Let's do one that looks a little different. Let me put a C down here. Let me put point C. Whoops. So we'll have 3 different points in here. Again, these don't take long. We could do like 10 of them in less than a minute. It won't take long. Okay? So when you're doing these, again, write down the point of that of the A, B, and C point. So give me the coordinates. So for part A, what are the coordinates for part A? Negative, what was it? Negative 2, 1. Okay, negative 2, 1. That means when I convert it, it's negative 2 plus 1i. Or you could just put negative 2 plus I. Okay, I'm good with either one, whatever you want. Okay, so this, or you could do this. Either one is okay. All right, what about part B? Let me put the point here. What's part B? 3, negative 1. So that would be 3 minus 1i, or if you want, just 3 minus I. Again, I prefer not having the 1 next to I because it just looks kind of weird. Okay, but if you want to put it, that's fine. Okay, there's nothing wrong with it. It just looks off. Okay, so anyway, and then point C. This point is what? 0, negative 3. So that's going to be 0 minus 3i, but 0 minus 3i is just minus 3i. So we would prefer to see negative 3i. So these are the answers that I would actually prefer, but if you don't write those, that's okay, as long as you write the other one. Okay? Even the one with the 0 is correct. It just looks odd, so but it's okay. All 3 of those are right, either way. Okay? So that's our review. I don't know if you guys have all the rest of your homework done, but if not, use this time to get that done.